Okay, we're going to start in 1 minute. Okay. Good morning and welcome to the Orange County School Board's Rural Development Workshop, which has been scheduled today for the purpose of discussing school board policies JCA, assignment of students to school, JFBD, magnet school programs, JICI, firearms, weapons, and destructive devices, JICK, threats, JLF, reporting child abuse protection, JLIE, student automobile use, JJ, extracurricular activities, and KBBA, parental rights and responsibilities. The school board will be hearing public comments on the aforementioned school board policies. School board members are attending in person or telephonically. I don't believe the other two are not. Yeah, we have two members that are not with us today. So I'm going to, actually Chair Jacobs and Member Felder are both not with us, so the rest of the board members are all in person, so we're good. I want to remind the public that board members will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus on the meeting itself, giving our attention to the matters immediately before us. Should you want to contact us, please continue to do so before or after each meeting. To my fellow board members and staff, when speaking, please make sure your microphone is turned on and speak directly into it so our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. We're going to do a moment of silence followed by the pledge. And now the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, we don't have any public speakers today, do we?
No, ma'am. We do not have any public speakers in person or on the phone, and no emails were received either.
Okay.
She said she wasn't going to be on the phone. Check with.
Okay, I'll check. Member Felder, are you on the phone with us?
No.
No.
No. She's not. Okay. We're going to start today with School Board Policy JCA, assignment of students to schools. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board has workshopped this previously in your Rural Development Workshop. You are to hear comments from the public. Since there are no comments, we are happy to walk through again any additional comments from board members. At this point, we will need your permission to move forward with the process. You'll have one more opportunity for outside comment when it comes to an actual board meeting. The first one is around assignment of students to schools. Mr. Moody, were there any changes after the last work session that we need to highlight?
Quite a few changes in this particular policy.
Let's walk through
that we'll
those.
need to highlight.
Good morning. As stated, we're here for the Rural Development Workshop for several policies today. The first policy, I apologize, let me go to the agenda. We're going to do an overview, timeline, summary of actions, proposed revisions, next steps, and then questions and discussions. Our tentative schedule, we were at Cabinet on April 18th, 2022. As Dr. Jenkins stated, we came for a work session on April 19th, 2022 with all the same policies. We are here today for a Rural Development Workshop, and we're hoping for board approval on June 14th, 2022, which will put all of the proposed policies into effect on that date.
Madam Chair, just for the sake of everyone being on the same page, we are going to stop after each policy rather than going through the 60 slides to make sure we are clear on feedback. If you will recall as well, at this point, any substantive changes would require backing up the process once again. So I want to be clear on that as we walk through it. We believe we've captured all that we need, but let's review them nonetheless, one at a time, and we'll stop for feedback after each.
Thank you. As previously stated, we're going to be reviewing policy JCA, assignment of students to school. That's going to be your student transfers policy. JFBD, magnet school programs. JICI, firearms, weapons, and destructive devices. That is going to be a new policy. JICK, our threats policy, which includes threats of harm to others and threats of self-harm. JLF, reporting child abuse and child protection. JLIE, student automobile use. JJ, extracurricular activities, and KBBA, parental rights and responsibilities. And just to clarify, that is not the Parental Bill of Rights. That is actually for custodial rights and responsibilities. With me today to present policy JCA is Mr. Moody and Ms. Neal, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Superintendent. So we'll review we'll try to highlight the changes that were made in JCA, assignment to students to schools, from last workshop, work session. JCA, the purpose for today is JCA is being revised to update available transfers for OCPS students. In the action summary, revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include content, formatting, terminology edits consistent with statutory language. And Ms. Neal will walk us through the changes.
Good morning. So we have the regular changes, and since you want us to just document the ones that have been.
Just the additional, please.
Additional pieces, right. So under, what is this one? Sorry. Under the introduction, section D, if the student has an individual education plan at the time of application for a transfer, the IEP will be reviewed to ensure the receiving school can appropriately implement the student's IEP before the transfer is approved. That additional wording has been added to all transfers. We have removed notwithstanding the foregoing for all students who have an approved transfer prior to the beginning of 2020-21 school year. If the student chooses to enroll in Orange County Virtual School, Florida Virtual School, or any other educational option for the 2021 school year, the transfer will be maintained. This was removed as it's no longer needed.
Tell us the section that you're in.
Under Opportunity Scholarship, per the work session, we have removed the words, "The student must stay for the school year unless there is a change in address." Per the work session, we also have removed "so long as the school has an available seat for the sibling and it is not over capacity." We removed that the siblings may not be able to apply for the transfer. We added "so long as the student has an available seat," or the school has an available seat for the sibling and is not over capacity. Per the work session, we also modified controlled open enrollment transfer. We no longer put capacity, and we modified the transfer for the controlled open enrollment transfer to be open year-round. There is no longer an end date.
So let's slow down on the controlled open enrollment piece. Let's go over that one a little more thoroughly, because what we've done is, pardon me, we had a transfer called open seat, which did the same thing. Open seat, controlled open enrollment in the past was we took applications January to April. Then we held a lottery in May, which we're about to hold the lottery soon for this coming year. So that was the time span for the open window for controlled open enrollment. And that's where, for example, if Princeton, they may have 10 seats, for example, we'd have 30 people apply for those 10 seats. We'd have to conduct a lottery for those. So now due to Senate Bill 254, if I got that number right, they are requiring changes to controlled open enrollment. And the changes that the new language will include kind of encompasses our former open seat. So now we have to process controlled open enrollment year-round, which we just had a small window throughout the year. So we have to do it year-round. We have to list the available seats by grade level, posted on our website, according to new language. And we have to, as I said, process year-round. And we have to also include language about available transportation. So you'll see some transportation language in there. We don't provide transportation for controlled open enrollment, but the bill will include, tells us to make reference to different statutes related to transportation. That would be FES, unique abilities. Some of those kids may get transportation. FES, if you're going outside of the district, transportation, things like that. So it really doesn't relate to controlled open enrollment transportation piece as much, but by statute, by language, we have to include that. So we'll make reference to, we have to post available transfer options on our website, so we'll do that. So again, controlled open enrollment will now encompass, and you'll see later that we've asked to delete open seat. So we've just incorporated open seat to controlled open enrollment, and we'll process that year-round after this policy is adopted. Okay?
Okay. So with that being said, I think Moody covered all the, except for we did add that there will be a wait list. The next transfer, rising transfer, per the work session, we did remove the wording within Orange County. So students or parents who reside or move outside of the county are eligible to remain in an Orange County public school. Per the work session, we also removed, once again, in every transfer, the student must stay at the school unless they change the address. All members agreed that we would allow siblings, so the change here is siblings may be eligible to transfer with a student who is granted the rising transfer, so long as the transfer has an available seat for the sibling and is not over capacity. In addition, the transfer for the sibling will only be available for one school year. Under magnet, per the work session, we added, magnet, we left alone. Magnet is good. Medical, we clarified under section A, documentation from a physician is required and may be reviewed by OCPS designated medical staff for verification and to determine the appropriate school location to serve the student. We also removed the student must remain, and we once again clarified and cleaned up the language under D, siblings of a student granted a medical transfer may be eligible for a transfer to the same school so long as the school has an available seat for the sibling and is not over capacity. Academic year completion, we just cleaned up some language in eligibility. An academic year completion transfer is available when the domicile of the guardian changes. We removed within Orange County and only added after the start of the school year. And then we clarified transfer is allowed, the academic year completion transfer is to allow a student to remain at the enrolled school for the remainder of the current school year when the family moves within, and we took out Orange County. We added the state of Florida and outside of the attendance area of the school after the start of the school year. We also added in psychological transfer, the change siblings, and it's Section E. Siblings may be eligible to transfer with the student who is granted the psychological transfer, so long as the school has an available seat for the sibling and is not over capacity. OCPS staff transfer, we added or separated on-site and off-site, and we put the words, the student's guardian works in a particular school and the guardian desires to have the student enrolled at that school or the next nearest qualified school if the school of employment does not serve the student's current grade level, or the student's guardian works in an OCPS facility and the guardian desires to have the student enrolled at the next nearest qualified school. And once again, the next nearest qualified school as determined by the Office of Student Enrollment. We also cleaned up Section C under staff. Students of OCPS staff may qualify for an OCPS staff transfer to schools that are solely magnet schools if the student's guardian is currently employed at the magnet school. In addition, if applicable, the following will be considered before the OCPS staff transfer to a magnet school is granted. If the student has an IEP at the time of application to the magnet school will review the IEP to ensure the magnet school can appropriately implement the student's IEP. If the application is for the Orlando Gifted Academy, the student must be eligible as a gifted student and receiving services via an education plan. ESE sibling, we took out the words transfer. There is no transfer eligibility for sibling of McKay Scholarship recipients because McKay Scholarship is no longer available. Significant. Pending move, we changed and added that under Section C, if the family does not move by the date provided, the guardian may apply for an extension by providing documentation for the reason for the delay to the Office of Student Enrollment prior to the end of the 90-day period. And grandfather transfer. So here's where we have quite a few changes. A grandfather transfer applies when a student is rezoned by OCPS and the student has not moved from the student's current residence. The grandfather transfer allows the student to remain at the student's current school instead of being rezoned to another school. The grandfather transfer is available only for a student who meets the following criteria. A, the student has been rezoned by OCPS 2 or more times at the student's current address. We added siblings may be eligible to transfer with the student who is granted this type of grandfather transfer so long as they qualify for another transfer as stated herein. The student who has been rezoned by OCPS from an established school to another established school, we also added siblings may be eligible to transfer with the student who is granted this type of grandfather transfer so long as they qualify for another transfer as stated herein. And once again, we added siblings are granted. The following shall apply to a grandfather. We took out siblings are not eligible.
So Section C of that says the student has been rezoned by OCPS and is rising 5th or 8th grade student. We included as a possible sibling transfer, and it reads, siblings may be eligible to transfer with the student who is granted this type of grandfather transfer, so long as the school has an available seat for the sibling and is not over capacity. In addition, the transfer for the sibling will only be for one school year. Again, that's for the rising 5th and 8th grade student, the sibling.
And the final one, or next to the final, is the hope. We took out, because it was still in language, that they had to remain. We took out the language And we added so long as there's an available seat, and open seat transfer has been completely taken from the JCA policy. And this concludes my portion.
That's a summary of their changes since the work session. Superintendent?
Thanks, team. Madam Chair, any questions or comments from the board? Certainly appropriate at this time. Hopefully we've gotten it covered so that we will not have to go back to square one, but this is the time to intervene should there be any additional concerns.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. Member Gould.
When you were talking about the controlled open enrollment, what's that formula for that capacity? How do you determine if there's capacity at the school, and what are we reporting?
90% capacity at a school, where we leave 10% for the zoned students. So it's
Okay.
90%.
So if there's a 10% opening at that school, they can transfer
Yes,
into
ma'am.
the school? Okay. And then, and how often does that get updated? Is that going to be a monthly update?
So according to Senate bill, it says every 12 weeks. However, we
It's a quarter.
are proactive, so we keep track
Sure. Yeah.
daily.
And we have a lot of movement, so that makes sense. On the kids that are siblings that are grandfathered in, you said the fifth and eighth graders are only 1 year. What if they're held back?
So those are unique situations that we would work through.
Okay.
I think we heard from this board and the previous work session that we want to be friendly to parents, we want to be accommodating to families, and we know the stress of having kids at different schools, so we would work through individual cases. I
Okay.
think that would be this board's direction.
Yep. All right. I just wanted to clarify
Yes, ma'am.
those two things. Those were my only things, because we see a lot of that, request for the transfers in the open enrollment. Of course, I don't have too much capacity anywhere, but they still ask, and that clarity will be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I basically have the same topic areas as Member Gould, just a few different questions. With the open enrollment, we're going to be looking at it earlier than every 12 weeks. So we're going to look at it more frequently than that. What would the process look like? So if someone in February wanted to move to a school that we had open, how quickly will the process take for us to review the enrollment, for them to apply, and for them then to be a student at that school they're applying to?
So the list is continuous.
Okay.
So once they apply, the response is pretty much overnight.
Oh, so there'll be no more having to wait for open enrollment. That's
Right.
That's nice. That'll be nice for parents.
The list will be on the website as well.
Right.
Okay, awesome. And then for the grandfather transfers, it almost seems like the grandfather transfer, it's probably pertinent to Member Gould's area. Like for my area, I have so much capacity that it's almost like an antiquated term, because due to Senate Bill 254, technically, as long as we have capacity, they don't have to be grandfathered in. They can just apply at any time, at any given moment, and stay longer, even if they're not a fifth grader or an eighth grader. So I'm just wondering if that language, due to that bill passing and due to us changing open enrollment, A, is necessary, and B, should it include some other language, because it's kind of ambiguous or confusing when you look at the grandfathered, when technically, if I'm at Castle Creek and I want to go to Camelot, I could do that next month, and whether I'm a fifth grader or eighth grader, doesn't matter where I'm zoned to, because both of those schools have capacity. So I didn't know if that's something that we wanted to look at or review.
Madam Chair, so So that's a great question. I'm assuming the board was hoping to give some priority. So let's say there's capacity at a school, those sibling transfers might get in before those others who are seeking it through open enrollment. I thought you wanted some preference given to the siblings first. That makes sense?
That makes total sense, and I agree with that process.
Okay.
Perfect.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Member Colbert.
Thank you. On the open seat, will you just clarify for me the timeline? Because you said you're doing lottery currently for the fall, right? So when will that take place? I know you said when, after this is adopted. When is that?
So open seat is gone away. The controlled open enrollment transfer, once this is voted on, then we're looking at July 1.
Okay. So that would be available for fall?
Oh, the lottery for, I'm sorry,
Is that
did I
right?
answer that? May 6th is the lottery for,
For the fall.
yes.
But then when this policy takes place this summer, that will also be available for
Yes,
fall?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That's it, Member Colbert? Okay, I think my question's been answered. So, Member Castor-Denal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question has to do more with Hillcrest and Howard. The issue of students of staff transfer to OGA was answered, and that they still have to qualify. But where does the staff students transfer fall within the lottery system? Are there seats that will be set aside for a teacher's child before the lottery?
So yes, ma'am. So if I may, what we've discussed was the staff transfers for on-site for those particular full magnet schools. Those transfers would be handled outside of the lottery process. So for example, at Hillcrest, if the principal knew that they had one staff member with a child, they would be able to provide the Office of School Choice or Magnet Division of School Choice a number that would include taking into account the staff child as well, so that and there's some, obviously with class size, there's some flexibility in the numbers. So we would be able to accommodate staff outside of the lottery.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
that's an excellent point that we clarified, because to try to put it in the lottery.
Microphone.
That's an excellent point of clarification. Rather than trying to somehow weight them in the lottery or do something within the lottery process, which can be sometimes quite contentious, it is a benefit of our employees that they are placed in those seats before we start calculating the lottery. Nice and clean, and a benefit to our employees. I want to make that clear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Superintendent. Member Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the psychological transfer. So the psychological transfer is based on a psychologist from the outside, or can be a recommendation from somebody from OCPS,
So.
from a counselor, social worker?
Correct. So basically, a psychological is the parent would have to provide a compelling psychological reason that they're requesting the transfer. A lot of times, the Office of Student Enrollment can make the determination based on the description and summary of events, or the description that the parent supplies. When it becomes that they're referencing any mental health diagnosis or anything out of our realm, then yes, we send it on to the school psychologist to do further review or evaluation.
So we can base the recommendation, maybe, I'm just thinking about low-income families that they don't have any type of medical support or any type of psychologists, and they just have statements, the experience that they're facing in their homes, and then they need help from the school. That works as well?
Yeah, so can I give an example? So certain situations, for example, if I'm a student attending a school and during COVID, we had a couple of parents pass away or situations in the home. So if I'm a student that has to be displaced or I'm going to live with someone else, then that person may apply for a psychological for the child to remain at the school. And of course, we would try to meet that need. That's a, a situation. Or there would be circumstances where I'm just going to use bullying maybe is occurring and the school is aware of it. The school has done certain accommodations or taken in a certain situation, tried to assist. However, the school is making a recommendation in addition to the parent or guardian requesting the transfer.
Perfect. Do we
Right.
have any type of policy for students that are transferred for positive pathways and they are just transferred even with the bully and the group of people that they were fighting, or we don't have anything related to positive pathways when we transfer them and they have that type of psychological challenges because they are be placed with the group of students that they were fighting or having the issues in the previous school?
So under the HOPE is one opportunity for a transfer, but I think
So I was just coming up to answer your first question. Good morning. When it comes to psychological transfers and those needs, our school psychologists can also assist if there is a student that needs an evaluation or something for a psychological transfer and they're not able to get those resources on the outside, which had been your original question. When it comes to positive pathways, Ms. Kopesky and I were just talking, it is a discipline placement, so there is really no other placement option because they are required to go there in lieu of expulsion. So the only other option would be a full removal of that student
So
in
because
most circumstances.
So in the first question, the internal staff member can transfer that student, can make recommendations of transferring the student. Yes?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, the first recommendation
Yes.
can happen, okay.
And then our
So-
school psychologists can assist the family
Okay.
if they're not able to get their own psychological opinion from the outside.
Okay, and with the second question, we don't have a policy.
Sorry. So, the transfer to an alternative placement would fall underneath the Code of Student Conduct, which will be coming before you in a couple weeks. But we don't have a specific transfer under JCA. A student at Positive Pathways could potentially apply for the Hope Scholarship, but that would not be to another Orange County public school. They would have to utilize the scholarship program to go to either a private school or to go to another county.
So they can apply for a transfer through the HOPE scholarship in Positive Pathways.
Correct.
Once they
So-
are transferred to Positive Pathways.
Yes, ma'am. So it would be, they could apply for any type of transfer that would allow them to go to another county or possibly get a scholarship for a private school. So say, like you had stated earlier, the bullying and harassment, they could ask for the Hope Scholarship. They wouldn't be allowed to go to another OCPS school because that is the school they're assigned under the Code of Student Conduct. However, they could use that for private or for another county, or the same with controlled open enrollment. If they wanted to go to another county that had a school with capacity based on their policies and how they transfer students, they could exercise that option as well. I don't know how other counties work with discipline offenses, but I do know when students come to us, and if they're currently in an alternative placement or expelled from that school, we actually uphold that discipline here as well, and we follow the same thing. So I can't say that if they go to another county that they'll definitely get in to a school. It would be whatever that county's policies are, but they could potentially apply for something out of county or private.
Yeah. No, my concern is that the majority of our students that are transferred to Positive Pathways are students of color, are also students of low income, from low income families. And, I see that they don't have other options because maybe they don't have transportation to go to another county, to go to a private school, even though they receive the HOPE scholarship. I believe that we have to develop something to, a policy to to help them psychologically speaking, because they also have to be taken in consideration, because sometimes they don't have options. And we don't have anything to help them psychologically speaking in terms of providing another option other than positive pathways. Okay, we have positive pathway. For example, I'm just thinking about different cases. One person having a fight with few students, so all of them are gonna go to the same grade, to the same space, and we have a positive pathway, overpopulated positive pathways institution that are maybe, facing a lot of challenges because, now we have all the people that are fighting in the school in the same place. I know it's concerning. I don't know if they have enough psychological assistance for our students. Do we know more about
Yes. Madam Chair, if I may. So Positive Pathways is a unique environment. And I would say that I was there just the other day, and I can tell you, yes, we have kids across the district with various needs that come to Positive Pathways, as all schools do. We do have the mental health support at Positive Pathways, several counselors, a couple mental health counselors that we provide one-on-one as well as small group mental health sessions, as well as just counseling. So we do provide that, yes, ma'am. And we provide a safe environment at Positive Pathways. We have ample staff on site that it is so structured. They even transition from one class to another. We have people out in the hallway, and it is highly structured, more so than a traditional brick and mortar school. Very structured.
I visited the school when we don't have a lot of students, so I think the environment is different.
So it is, and we have to provide more structure, and we provided more staff as well. And anytime the staff principal informs me that it's getting, and it's a little, the enrollment's quite high now, so it will, at the end of the year, it should decrease for the start of the school year. So enrollment will fluctuate. So anytime they need additional staff, the district has been more than willing to provide additional support to Positive Pathways. And a lot of kids, several kids, my story just the other day, I was there, and one young lady it was her last day, and she came up and gave SAFE coordinator, for example, and administration gave him a big hug because it was her last day, and she really didn't want to go back to her other school, to her home school, because she was successful at Positive Pathways. And those are the great stories. Those are the stories we all like to hear. Those are the stories that make you feel like you've done something right, right? So we need more of those good stories, obviously.
Yes. And thank you for sharing, sharing it.
We make Positive Pathways a very structured, safe environment, for all kids, because we know that kids are there for a reason. But kids make mistakes, right? And so part of our counseling is to help them realize what mistake they have made and how they can do differently. What decisions can they make in the future that would prevent the same behaviors? And part of it too is in my roundtable discussion with the SAFE coordinator was on my instructional roundtable just the other day, last week, and she shared that she meets with these before the kids go back to their zone school. She meets with them to discuss their friend group, how they got in trouble, what decision was made, at the point in time. And so we meet one-on-one with them. She meets one-on-one with them prior to going back to their zone school to get them in the mindset of, it's not just discipline, right? It's not just, you're not just being sent there because it's discipline in nature. We want it to be a learning experience, right? We want them to be able to learn and to not make the same decision in the future. So she meets with them individually about what happened And when you go back to your zone school, you're going to be with, your friends. You're going to see these people. What are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? What support do you have in place at your zone school? What can we help you with? And she'll follow up with them as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
So are we perfect? No, ma'am. But we're on that journey, I can tell you, and we do good things for kids at Positive Pathways.
Perfect.
Yep, I'm very pleased with them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for all you do as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Will be
That's it,
all.
Member Lopez. Dr. Jenkins, did you have something on this?
Actually, Mr.
Okay.
Moody covered it. I was going to mention two things. One, that it is a structured program intended to change behavior. So it's a temporary placement for a disciplinary issue intended to counsel and coach students so when they go back to their school, they can be more successful. Dr. Vasquez and staff are looking at whether or not we need an additional location so that when it's never crowded at the beginning of the year, but when it gets a little more crowded, would be a time to consider whether or not we need a secondary location. And then we also have to consider recidivism. If we see students who are being assigned there more than once, there was a time, Mr. Moody alluded to it, there was a time that we had some students saying, I'd rather be there. It's not supposed to be a permanent placement. Do you like it there? The classes are smaller. You know the team there, and it's very structured. Sometimes children may feel more successful there. Whether or not we have other options for them is something we can certainly discuss, Member Lopez. And additionally, one district actually has a Positive Pathways that is a virtual school. I will tell you, we don't believe that's the best set up for students who are having behavioral issues to then put them in virtual Positive Pathways. It does not solve the issues because they have to be able to interact with their peers, and we know that digital learning for some of our neediest populations is not going to get them what they need. And so we'll continue to watch and monitor. I think the size of the school would be our first consideration, Member Lopez, to see how we might be able to expand that. But your concerns are duly noted.
Thank you, Superintendent. I buzzed back in because something you said reminded me of a question that I have about staff transfers based on a request that I actually got this week that they're aware of. In the staff transfers, it says the next qualified school, which, on the surface makes a lot of sense, obviously. The whole purpose of this is to make it easier for an employee to bring their child to a school that's near where they work. But in the case that was brought to me, the teacher was requesting a different school than what was the next closest, and it was a 0.4 mile difference. And under the staff transfer, it was denied, which is, makes sense. But my question, as I kind of thought about this more, and when you said, Dr. Jenkins, about the magnet seats being a benefit of employment, we need teachers, and I think offering them a staff transfer is a great benefit. There may be some situations, very few and far between, where they may request a school that might not be the next nearest qualified school. And I'm just wondering, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but if we could offer that as a benefit, an additional benefit, that basically you could, as long as your child qualifies for that school for whatever reason, could go to that school regardless of if it's the next nearest qualified school to where you are employed. And I'm only thinking of that because of this particular case. And there's reasons this particular teacher is asking for her child to go to this other school that's a little bit further away than the one that she's supposed to send him to. So, and I just think that, if there are teachers and we need teachers, and wouldn't that be a great benefit? And that might be a great benefit, a great way to recruit teachers, because I'm thinking if I want my choice of schools to put my kid in, that's a great reason to come teach at OCPS, because we allow our teachers to do that. But that's just my thoughts. I don't know if anyone else has any
That-
thoughts about that.
Madam Chair, I'm assuming if it's open enrollment, that would probably accommodate, as long as there's capacity at the school? What is the
There's not
difference?
capacity.
There's not capacity, then we have an issue, because then how do you tell, you let mine go, and then you tell Karen, nope, yours can't go? That's a bit of an issue if there's not capacity.
Right. No, and I understand that. I'm just thinking that that would be considered, a preference, a benefit of an employee.
Except if there are 20 of them and the school is over capacity, you'd have to allow, where do you stop if they're already over capacity as a preference for employees for a school that's already over capacity? I thought I had an easy solution for you if they have the capacity. If they don't have capacity, I don't know how we can be fair. Karen gets to you first, she gets in. The 30th person, who's also an employee, gets to you. Where do you stop overcrowding the school? I don't know how to manage that. But we'll certainly keep it under
Yeah.
consideration. And it can certainly be, sometimes if there's a need for a special exception, it can certainly be under consideration. But if you put it in policy, that means the next 50 employees who say, that's a great school and I don't care what it takes, I want my kid in there, you'd have to accommodate them if you put it in policy that broad.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Thank
Good
you.
thinking, though.
Okay, I think that's it for this policy. Thank you. I think we're going to move on. I believe so. I think we're good. All right.
Onward.
Onward to School Board Policy JFBD, Magnet School Programs.
All right, let's hit the additional changes only.
All right. So Dr. Kim Marlowe will be joining me to go over the additional changes to JFBD.
Good morning. Some of the changes that we have coming from the work session are consistency in verbiage and language, so that across the policy we see the same reference to the same opportunity, whether it's the word lottery or whether it's the students getting ready and proving they've passed a previous grade. On slide 25, if we could get over there, are you on?
Yep.
Slide 25, wonderful. So on slide 25, we see academic and related criteria. In the middle school section, we have stricken the reference to the grade reports to prove on grade level performance, and have replaced that with applicants must be eligible for the grade for which the applicant is applying. And that really, truly is the goal. Also on that slide, we see the high school reference, and it's basically the same, that we have stricken that the grade reports from the previous 2 years showing on grade level performance have been replaced with that the student must be eligible for the grade level for which they are applying. Again, which is the goal there. In application selection, admission, and process, which I believe is a slide or so over, I'm sorry. We did make a change to where the Office of School Choice Services may determine magnet student selection by computer, which was the old language lottery, and we have stricken computer and used strictly lottery process, which we have done throughout the policy for consistency. On our slide 29, when we speak to middle school eligibility, we have basically adjusted this language since Skyward gives us the grades for our current OCPS students, so that this language applies to out-of-district students, private or otherwise. And we have adjusted this language, so middle school eligibility, selection, and admission, that to determine the eligibility for the applicants outside of the district for middle school programs. They must establish at the time of previous to report cards for eligibility. Also, at the time of application of Orlando gifted applicant, this student must be eligible as a gifted student and receiving services via an educational plan in state of Florida pursuant to Florida law and administrative code rules. We did add that. So again, we're looking at the eligibility of the student based on passing the previous grades. If we go into slide 33, which is student continuation and exit criteria, we have retained that language and stated that as a general rule, a student who is performing in a magnet school or magnet program must or may remain until the end of the student reaches the highest level attained by that program or school, provided, this is the new language, the student remains enrolled in the magnet school or magnet program and remains in good academic standing. Over on slide 39, towards the very end, if you will. Sure I got everybody. We have added a provision to the review section for when we review each of the programs annually, and have added that program development input from the students and their parents and legal guardians will be a part of the review or remain a part of the review as it has in the past. And that concludes the additional pieces that were added from our work session.
Thank you very much. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So our magnet programs, our magnet schools, if we had capacity available in our magnet schools, would the new bill that's going into effect, will that affect how we enroll in our magnet schools? Like if we're under capacity, will we have to also look at magnet applications and open enrollment? Or do we have the latitude on our magnet schools to only allow those in that apply for a magnet? So I guess my question is, does the bill affect our magnet program for open enrollment if there's capacity?
I think currently that does exist. If we were to look at the controlled open enrollment schools, there are some that are accepting students who would not be applying to be a magnet student. Maxi was on there at one point. It may still be. Those students were applying through controlled open enrollment to go to Maxi. And then I had students who also applied, because there is space, to be a part of their visual and performing arts magnet. So the numbers were able to adjust for both areas, if you will, both kinds of transfers.
So someone would then be allowed to apply to open enrollment to a magnet program, or through open enrollment, would they only be allowed into the school but not the magnet program?
So if I may, let me clarify and add to Dr. Marlowe. So if I think the new language, and obviously we'll have to get legal interpretation if needed, but so if I am a parent, I can apply for control. So let me delineate a magnet program within a school, for example, Maxi, right? And then a full magnet school, Howard Hillcrest. So let's approach both of them, because I think it would be treated differently. So the Maxi, for example, may have a capacity within their controlled open enrollment. So a parent can apply to go to Maxi for a transfer, controlled open enrollment, or any other type of transfer, right? Because they have capacity. Once there, if that parent wants to participate in the magnet program at Maxi, one of two things can happen. They can, if there's space available in those magnet classes, those classes specific for magnet students, then that student can participate in those magnet classes. Not officially a magnet student, but can benefit from the magnet program. And then in the next application cycle, they can apply to be a magnet student, right? And then be accepted through, and then they would be a magnet student, right? So they can benefit just being a general ed student for magnet classes, and then next year apply to be a magnet student, right? So that's, if it is a school, a full magnet school like Howard Hillcrest, I think there's language that reads that it's based on our school capacity language. So I think that would exclude full-time magnet programs of Howard Hillcrest, et cetera.
Okay.
I believe it would be our interpretation of that.
Okay.
So it wouldn't. So if I'm a parent and Howard Hillcrest happens to have a vacancy, or they're not at capacity, then a student would not be eligible for controlled open enrollment to that full magnet school. That would be our interpretation at this point in time.
Okay. So, but technically, if a child like at Maxie applied, they could just benefit from the magnet program without ever really applying to the magnet program then?
They could, yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moody. Member Gould.
So that causes me to have a follow-up question. I don't think we have a lot of capacity in our high school programs, but the high school programs have some criteria to applying for magnet. Some have auditions, some have, whatever that criteria is. There isn't anything in the statute that would supersede the criteria for those specific disciplines.
Not that I read in the
Okay.
in the language, no, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that looks like that's it from the school board. It looks like we have consensus on this one as well. Ready to move on. School board policy JICI, firearms, weapons, and destructive devices. Dr. Jenkins.
Give us a moment to change out speakers.
Okay. Sorry
Chief
about that.
Holmes? If you recall, this is a brand-new policy rather than a revision.
Correct. So
Take it away.
JICI, firearms, weapons, and destructive devices. The purpose, JICI is being created to specifically and explicitly prohibit firearms and weapons on school board property. Although there is a reference in other policies, it's important to have a separate policy due to the heightened concern for safety when dealing with firearms and weapons. Policy language is created to include content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. The additional revisions we've added here since the work session include the definition for a destructive device, and that was at the request of the board. So destructive device means any bomb, grenade, mine, rocket, missile, pipe bomb, or similar device containing an explosive, incendiary, or poison gas, and includes any frangible container filled with an explosive, incendiary, explosive gas, or expanding gas, which is designed or so constructed as to explode by such filler and is capable of causing bodily harm or property damage. Any combination of parts either designed or intended for use in converting any device into a destructive device, and from which a destructive device may be readily, thank you, having difficulty speaking today, assembled. Any device declared a destructive device by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, any type of weapon which is designed to, or may readily be converted to expel a projectile by the action of any explosive, and which has a barrel with the bore of a 1/2 inch or more in diameter, and ammunition for such destructive devices, but not including shotgun shells or any other ammunition designed for use in a firearm or other destructive device. And that came directly from statute. Let's see. That came from 790.001 Florida statutes. The other change is we went through and we added the prohibition for destructive devices throughout the policy. So wherever it said firearms and weapons, it now says firearms, weapons, and destructive devices. And then there was also a modification to two of the sentences. Slide 44. So the prohibition of firearms and weapons for students and the prohibition of firearms and weapons for employees. We added in may be subjected to. So it now reads students or employees found in violation of this policy while on board property, school transportation, or at any school-sponsored event may be subjected to disciplinary action. And then obviously for students, it would be in accordance with the Code of Student Conduct. And those were the revisions we made to JICI based on the work session suggestions.
Yes. I actually have a question, but I'll let Member Gallo go because she just buzzed in. So, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have and I think I know the answer, but I want to ask. The governor has stated that if not during special session, during the next session, that he will approve permitless carry in the state of Florida. Will that affect this policy at all, or are we still covered under statute that we can say no guns on our campus?
So I will have to look into what it is that they're proposing, what the language is in the bill to see how that conflicts or goes against what is currently in statute. But without having that bill in front of me, I wouldn't be able to give a solid legal opinion at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not constitutional carry because there's nothing in the Constitution that says we get to carry a gun concealed. So it's permitless carry. I've been having that argument. I'm sorry. I've been having that discussion about what is permitless carry and what is constitutional carry. And constitutional carry actually does not exist because there is nothing in our Constitution that allows us to carry a concealed weapon.
Okay. That's okay. I
believe Mr. Palmerini would like to cite the statute to you.
No, not the statute, but there is a case winding its way through the United States Supreme Court. It's a case out of New York that is tackling that exact issue of whether or not folks have the right to carry a concealed weapon and what permission and what parameters. So in 2 months, that could change, and I see to be saying that a lot about a lot of Supreme Court decisions lately.
That's okay. No, it was not. I agree with that. Okay. My question, real quick, Ms. Kopesky, is the weapon. Our discussion about this particular self-defense weapon that has come up recently, and you said that there have been other cases of this weapon on campuses. It is not clearly listed in statute, so it's not in our description of a weapon, but it is being sold and advertised as a self-defense weapon. Should we consider adding that to our description of weapons so that it's clearly in our policy?
So I think in our definition of weapon currently, it says also included are objects that are used to intimidate or threaten another person or objects used to harm another person. We could make the argument that it's included there, but in our code, we are looking at adding language there so it specifically notifies students and parents that those items are not allowed on campus.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. And I think that's it from the board. So I think we're good on that policy.
Okay.
We're going to move on to policy JICK threats.
Okay. JICK is being revised to include legislative updates and updates required by the State Board of Education through the Florida Administrative Code. Revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include legislative updates, content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language and the model policy. At the work session, we actually did not have many changes because majority of the changes to JICK were from that rule, from the model policy as well as from the Florida Administrative Code rule. So in order to just go over those, the two updates that we have, one would be under the definition section. So we're adding in a statement that says definitions denoted with a plus are adopted as provided in Florida statutes, the Florida Administrative Code, and or the Florida Department of Education, Office of Safe Schools model behavioral threat assessment policies and best practices for K through 12 schools. And so a plus is going to be added to the end of aberrant behavior. The comprehensive school threat assessment guidelines behavioral threat assessment instrument. There'll also be one added to the end of education records. Involuntary examination, law enforcement officer, mental illness, minor, reasonable attempt to notify, receiving facility, school-based mental health services provider, substantive threats, threat assessment, transient threats, and voluntary examination. So every one of those definitions within the policy actually come from either statute, rule, or the model policy. And then also within our definitions that we were asked to change was under the definition of parent. So we have updated that to read that a parent means a person who gives birth to a child or a person whose consent to the adoption of the child will be required under Section 63.062 Florida statutes. If a child has been legally adopted, the term parent means the adoptive parent of the child. The term does not include an individual whose parental relationship to the child has been legally terminated or an alleged or prospective parent. And those are the two changes that we were asked to make after the work session. Dr. Jenkins.
That's it. We don't have any speakers, but I do just want to say thank you for listening. You guys, you always do such a good job of hearing us at work sessions and then putting it directly in the policies. You do a great job of capturing what we say. So I really do appreciate the changes that you've made, and I'm sure my fellow board members do as well. All right, it looks like there are no speakers, so I guess we have consensus on that one as well. We're going to move on to School Board Policy JLF, reporting child abuse protection.
Okay. So JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection, is being revised to include statutory updates and align the policy with current practice. Revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. We have a couple changes since the work session. The first being under that third row there, reporting of child abuse and child neglect, introduction. Initially, we had changed the school personnel may notify appropriate law enforcement agency. We were asked to change that back to shall. And so you'll see that in the red line of the policy that it will now read school personnel shall notify the appropriate law enforcement agency, which may include the school resource officer if the reporter is not transferred to the responding law enforcement agency by DCF. In addition, under I'll make sure I have this right. Under that second row there, reporting procedures for reporting child abuse. Initially, it read that the OCPS principal must also be informed following the telephoned or online report. We are modifying principal to employee supervisor to make sure that includes also non-schools who possibly don't have a principal. And then the last modification is the title for the child protection interviews and protective custody. That's just updated to include protective custody. It initially just said child protection interviews. And those were all the updates since the work session.
Okay. We have no speakers, so it looks like we are good with that one as well. Moving on. Well, you guys are moving quick. Policy JLIE, student automobile use.
The purpose of JLIE is being revised to align with the policy, to align the policy with current practice, and revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. There were just a couple of things that we actually caught after the work session that we wanted to clarify on. So the first is right there under the last row, vehicle use by students, contents in vehicle. It says each student is responsible for all contents contained within the vehicle he or she drives on board property. At the work session, it said school property. So we wanted to update that to ensure it includes all board property. And then the other one that we had is if the student fails to comply with the rules, just adding in there that if the student fails to comply with this policy or any board policy, any board policy was missing during the work session red line. So we added that in as well to ensure that that contains all policies. And then the last change would be adding the term destructive device to this policy as well to ensure that firearms, weapons, and destructive devices are also included here as they were in JICI. And that concludes JLIE. Dr. Jenkins.
Okay, looks good. We have no comments from the board, so I think we are good to move on to that one. We are going to move on to School Board Policy JJ, extracurricular activities.
Good morning, board members. There were no actual substantive changes to the policy from the last meeting. However, there is a note in one of the slides that discusses when a teacher or a faculty member is able to be the advisor. So we did update that note. So the note states, under the current OCPS supplement handbook, when a supplement position becomes available, instructional employees at the work location shall be notified and considered first. The supplemental position is given to classified and/or hourly personnel if no qualified instructional personnel are available to pick up the position. We just wanted to make sure that that note aligned exactly to what is in the current handbook. And that was the only change to anything that was made in this policy from the last time that we met. Dr. Jenkins?
Okay. I think we're all good on that one as well. Thank you so much. School board policy KBBA, our last one. Good job, board. Parental rights and responsibilities. Ms. Kopesky.
This is going much faster than last time. So the last policy, KBBA, there were only 3 updates since the work session. But let me go through the purpose first. So KBBA is being revised to update the policy to include additional legal terminology and clarify how different orders may impact a parent legal guardian's involvement at school. Revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include content formatting and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. One of the changes that we're recommending since work session is the actual title of the policy. It currently reads parental rights and responsibilities, and we'd like to change that to custody rights and responsibilities, just to clarify that this isn't the Parental Bill of Rights policy that's currently being worked on. The next change was under the definition of parent, removing the terms woman and man, mother and father, and replacing them with person or parent. And that's going to be here on this slide. And I apologize, that was it. There were only 2 changes to KBBA from work session.
Okay, board. This is your last chance. Got nothing. I think the change in the title is a great move. That's Good thinking there, getting that clarified. I think we have consensus on that and all the others. I think we're good. Dr. Jenkins, anything else?
We are good, Madam Chair. Thank you to the members of the board for your diligence getting through it.
Yeah, that was a nice list of policies. Are you excited, Ms. Info? Woo! All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.